Fornax banged his head on the cryo chamber controls, green blood oozing from his battle wounds. The war was lost. The insectoid Kizin had ravaged 100 worlds, slaughtering trillions. This ancient derelict Dyson sphere was the Denobulan Empire's last hope. Fornax's heart pounded. The year was 2478. The Denobulans had fought the Kizin for centuries, but now defeat loomed. Fornax had led a desperate, covert mission into the shattered Dyson sphere, praying to find firstborn weapons to turn the tide. Exploring the ruins, Fornax's team had accidentally triggered hidden cryopods. Row after row of eerily humanoid creatures hung in perfect stasis. Actual humans. Historical archives said the firstborn uplifted humans, granting them wondrous abilities, before the firstborn vanished. Under the crumbling Terran hegemony, pure humans were thought extinct, their incredible powers fading into myth. An ominous countdown blared. The pods hissed open, releasing plumes of icy mist. Fornax glimpsed the lead human's nameplate, Gerald Cooper. Muscles rippled beneath pale skin as the human's eyes flicked open, blazing with fierce intelligence. Everything would change now. The Kzin would learn to fear humanity once more. But would these ancient heroes fight for Fornax's cause, or would they become an even deadlier threat? The survival of Fornax's entire species hung in the balance. The cryopod doors swung open with a prolonged hiss, clouds of vapor spilling out onto the ancient metal floor. Gerald Cooper's eyes snapped open as he sucked in a deep breath, the icy mist still clinging to his bare skin. His enhanced senses immediately kicked into overdrive, assessing his surroundings in milliseconds. Strange alien life forms stood before him, reptilian and covered in iridescent green scales. Cooper's squadmates were already exiting their own pods, moving to flank him with a lethal grace that belied their centuries of stasis. Cooper counted 12 of his brothers and sisters in arms, and 8 of the unknown creatures. The lead alien was tall and muscular, but Cooper noted the subtle trembling of exhaustion and pain. Green blood dripped from multiple wounds on the creature's body. It had seen heavy combat recently. Cooper stepped forward, the mist curling around his legs. "What year is it? Who are you, and why have you awakened us?" He barked in the alien's own language, an archaic dialect of what his HUD helpfully labeled as Denobulan. The alien leader looked taken aback at Cooper's fluency, his slitted eyes widening. "I am Commander Fornax of the Denobulan Empire. The year is 2478 by your reckoning. Our people fight a desperate war for survival against the Kzin. We need your help." Cooper absorbed this information, his enhanced cognition already sifting and analyzing. He shared a look with his squad, reading their facial expressions and body language. A consensus was reached in seconds. "My team and I will fight for you on 2 conditions," Cooper declared, his voice hardening. "I will take full command of our combined forces, and in return you will help us discover what became of the rest of humanity and the firstborn who created us." Fornax hesitated, clearly torn. Cooper could see the war raging behind those reptilian eyes. The Denobulan was backed into a corner, and he knew it. Finally, Fornax nodded tersely. Agreed. Cooper allowed himself a tight smile. "Then let's get to work. We have a war to win." The journey back to Denobulan space passed in a blur. Cooper and his soldiers spent every waking moment training their new alien allies in advanced combat techniques, pushing them to the limits of their abilities. In the privacy of their own quarters, the humans planned their first strike against the Kzin, poring over star charts and intelligence reports. Cooper felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, the eager anticipation before a mission. He thought of his fallen brothers and sisters, the once mighty Terran hegemony now reduced to myth and legend. He thought of the firstborn, the godlike beings who had elevated humanity to the heights of power, only to vanish without a trace. Cooper didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. The Kzin would soon learn to fear the wrath of humanity once again, and he would not rest until he uncovered the truth of what had happened to his people. The scent of battle was in the air, and Gerald Cooper was ready to meet it head-on. Cooper and his team, quickly dubbed Firstborn's Fury by the Denobulans, hit the ground running. They worked around the clock with Denobulan engineers, poring over ancient Firstborn schematics recovered from the Dyson sphere. Together they rapidly developed cutting-edge stealth systems, energy weapons that made Denobulan pulse rifles look like pea shooters, and AI-enhanced combat exoskeletons that turned each soldier into a one-man army. The Denobulan factories churned day and night, mass-producing the new tech. Cooper pored over star charts and Kazin troop movements, searching for a vulnerability to exploit. His eyes locked onto a heavily fortified asteroid base, the main resupply hub for the Kazin invasion forces. "There!" Cooper jabbed a finger at the hologram, looking up at Fornax and the Denobulan High Command. "That's where we strike. We cripple their supply lines, and the Xin offensive grinds to a halt." Fornax shifted uneasily, his scales rippling. "That base is a fortress. They'll have hundreds of ships guarding it. Even with your new weapons, a frontal assault would be suicide." Cooper's lips curved into a predatory smile. "Who said anything about a frontal assault?" The joint human Denobulan stealth frigate Shadow of Fury glided through Xin space like a wraith, its advanced cloaking systems rendering it all but invisible. On the bridge, Cooper sat in the command chair, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. 60 seconds to drop," the helmsman reported, his voice tight. Cooper stood, rolling his shoulders. His combat exoskeleton hummed with barely restrained power. "Get us in close and prepare for a hot drop. We hit them hard and fast before they even know what's happening." The Shadow of Fury drifted silently over the asteroid base, hovering above a seldom-used maintenance airlock. Cooper and his super soldiers gathered in the drop bay, checking weapons and sealing helmets. With a hiss of equalizing pressure, the drop bay doors yawned open, revealing the pitted surface of the asteroid below. Cooper leapt out, followed closely by his team and Fornax's hand-picked Denobulan commandos. They plummeted through the airless void, landing on the airlock with barely a sound. The outer airlock door peeled open like a tin can, as Cooper ripped it free with his exoskeleton-enhanced strength. Alarms began to blare as they stormed inside, but it was already too late for the keys in. The super soldiers tore through the base like a force of nature, their energy weapons cutting down Xin warriors with ruthless efficiency. Cooper was a blur of motion, his plasma sword carving a path of destruction. Fornax led his commandos in Cooper's wake, securing key objectives and planting demolition charges. He rounded a corner and stopped dead, his eyes widening in shock. Our massive Kazin mech, filled with weapons and armor, loomed over Cooper. The mech was 3 times the human size, but Cooper didn't even blink. He ducked under a swipe of its giant claws and leapt, his plasma sword flashing. The mech's head tumbled to the deck, sparks fountaining from its severed neck. Cooper landed in a crouch as the mech collapsed behind him, his face a mask of grim satisfaction. The raid was over in minutes, the asteroid base reduced to a smoldering ruin. The Shadow of Fury slipped away as silently as it had come, leaving devastation in its wake. News of the daring attack spread like wildfire. The Xin supply lines crumbled, their advance faltering, but even as the Denobulans celebrated, Cooper knew the war was far from finished. Deep in Kazin space, the Emperor seethed with rage at the humiliation. He would make the upstart humans and their Denobulan allies pay for this insult. The Kazin war machine turned, its sights set on the heart of the Denobulan Empire itself. The Kazin fleet struck without warning, hundreds of warships descending on the Denobulan core worlds like a swarm of locusts. Planetary defenses, caught off guard, crumbled under the onslaught. The Denobulan navy scrambled to respond, but they were outgunned and outmaneuvered at every turn. On the bridge of the Shadow of Fury, Cooper watched the tactical displays with a growing sense of dread. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. The Shadow of Fury shuddered as another volley of Kazin plasma fire slammed into its shields. On the bridge, Cooper gripped the chairs of the command chair, his eyes locked on the tactical display. "Shields down to 30%, the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with tension. Cooper's mind raced, analyzing the battlefield with the speed and precision of a quantum computer. The Denobulan fleet was in shambles, their ships outmatched and outgunned by the Kazin dreadnoughts. On the planet below, Kazin ground forces rampaged through cities, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. "We need to take out that lead dreadnought," Cooper said, his voice calm and controlled. "It's their command ship. If we can knock it out, it'll throw their whole fleet into disarray." Fornax, standing at Cooper's side, shook his head. "We'd never get close enough. Its defenses are too strong." Cooper's lips curved into a tight smile. "Not for my team." He turned to the comms officer. "Patch me through to the hangar bay." A moment later, the faces of Cooper's super soldiers appeared on the interface, their expressions grim and determined. "Listen up," Cooper said, his voice ringing with authority. "We're going to launch a boarding action on that Kazin dreadnought. Our goal is to capture the bridge and take out the command crew. It won't be easy, but I know you're up for the challenge." The super soldiers nodded, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. They lived for this, the thrill of battle against impossible odds. As the soldiers suited up and boarded their fighters, Cooper turned to Fornax. "I need you to keep that dreadnought busy. Buy us as much time as you can." Fornax nodded, his scales rippling with apprehension. "We'll do our best, but Cooper, be careful. We can't afford to lose you." Cooper clapped Fornax on the shoulder, a gesture of camaraderie and respect. "Don't worry about me. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve." The hangar bay doors yawned open, and the super soldiers' fighters streaked out into the void, their engines flaring with blue-white light. Cooper took the lead, his mind already racing ahead to the battle to come. The Kazin dreadnought loomed before them, a massive wedge of armor and weapons jam-packed with menace. Its point defense lasers opened fire, filling the void with criss-crossing beams of searing light. But the super soldiers were ready. Their enhanced reflexes and precognitive abilities allowed them to weave through the deadly web of lasers with uncanny grace, their fighters dancing and spinning like leaves in a hurricane. Cooper spotted a weakness in the dreadnought's defenses, a small thermal exhaust port that led directly to the main reactor. He fired, his plasma torpedoes streaking through the void and slamming into the port with a blinding flash of light. The dreadnought shuddered, its shields flickering and fading. Cooper's fighters darted in, landing in the hangar bay like a swarm of angry hornets. The super soldiers leapt from their cockpits, plasma rifles at the ready. Kazin warriors caught off guard, fell before their onslaught like wheat before a scythe. Cooper led the charge, his movements a blur of speed and precision. He could see the Kazin's moves before they made them, his precognitive abilities granting him an unbeatable edge. They fought their way to the bridge, leaving a trail of broken Kazin bodies in their wake. The bridge doors loomed before them, heavily armored and filled with gun turrets. Cooper didn't even slow down. He leapt, his body a coiled spring of muscle and cybernetics, and smashed through the doors like they were made of paper. The Kazin admiral, a massive brute with razor-sharp claws and teeth, whirled to face him. But Cooper was already moving, his plasma blade flashing in a deadly arc. The admiral's head tumbled to the deck, his body crumpling like a puppet with its strings cut. Cooper stood over him, his chest heaving with exertion. "Secure the bridge," he ordered, his voice hard. "And somebody find me a damn prisoner to interrogate. We need to know what the Kazin are planning." It didn't take long for the super soldiers to subdue the remaining Kazin crew. Cooper stood before a cowering Kazin officer, his plasma blade humming inches from the alien's throat. "Where is your staging area?" Cooper demanded, his eyes boring into the Kazins. "Where are the rest of your forces massing for the invasion?" The Kazin, trembling with fear, spilled everything. Cooper listened, his face growing grimmer with every word. When the Kazin finally fell silent, Cooper turned to his soldiers. "We have to move fast. The Kazin are gathering their forces for a final push. If we don't stop them now, the Denobulan core worlds will fall." Fornax, listening in over the comlink, spoke up. "What do you propose?" Cooper brought up a holographic map of the Kazin staging area, a massive asteroid field on the edge of Denobulan space. "We infiltrate their main fleet and sabotage their ships, take out their engines, weapons, life support, everything. Cripple them before they even have a chance to launch." Fornax's scales rippled with unease. That's a suicide mission, even for your team. Cooper's eyes flashed with grim humor. Suicide missions are our specialty, but we'll need the Denobulan fleet to launch a coordinated attack once we've sown some chaos. Can you rally your forces in time? Fornax straightened, his voice firm. We'll be ready, just give the word. As the super soldiers prepared for their most dangerous mission yet, Cooper pulled Fornax aside. There's something you should know, he said quietly. I've been having flashes of memory from before the cryo sleep, and there are gaps, big ones that I can't explain. Fornax frowned. What are you saying? Cooper shook his head. I'm not sure, but I have a feeling there's more to this super soldier program than we've been told, and the Firstborn, their disappearance doesn't add up. There's a piece of the puzzle we're missing. Fornax laid a hand on Cooper's shoulder. We'll find the answers, my friend, but first we have a war to win. Cooper nodded, his teeth gritting with determination. The fate of the Denobulan Empire and perhaps the entire galaxy rested on their shoulders. Failure was not an option. The infiltration of the Xin staging area was a tense and nerve-wracking affair. The super soldiers, with Cooper at their head, slipped through the asteroid field like ghosts, their stealth technology rendering them all but invisible to the Xin's sensors. They split into teams, each with a specific target. Cooper and his hand-picked squad were tasked with taking out the Kizin flagship, a massive dreadnought overflowing with enough firepower to level a planet. As they approached the behemoth, Cooper felt a familiar tingling at the base of his skull. His precognitive abilities, honed to a razor's edge by the Firstborn's genetic enhancements, were warning him of danger. He signaled his team to hold position, his eyes scanning the seemingly empty void around them. There, hidden among the tumbling asteroids, was a Kazin stealth fighter, its weapons already locking onto their position. Cooper reacted with lightning speed, his plasma rifle flashing in the darkness. The stealth fighter exploded in a brilliant burst of light and shrapnel, but the damage was done. Alarms began to blare across the Xin fleet as they realized they were under attack. Change of plans, Cooper barked into his comm. We're going loud. Hit them with everything you've got. The super soldiers burst into action, their weapons blazing as they darted among the Kazin ships like deadly fireflies. Explosions bloomed in the void as they took out engines, weapon systems, and life support with ruthless efficiency. But the Xin were quick to respond, their own fighters swarming out to meet the attackers. Cooper found himself locked in a desperate dogfight, his enhanced reflexes pushed to their limit as he wove and dodged through a hail of plasma fire. A lucky shot clipped his wing, sending his fighter spinning out of control. Cooper gritted his teeth, fighting against the G-forces threatening to crush him into his seat. With a supreme effort of will, he brought the fighter back under control, just in time to see a Kazin warship bearing down on him, its weapons glowing with deadly intent. Cooper didn't hesitate. He fired his remaining torpedoes, watching with grim satisfaction as they streaked towards the warship's bridge. The resulting explosion was so bright it left afterimages dancing in his vision. But there was no time to celebrate. The Kizin flagship loomed before him, its hull overflowing with gun turrets and missile launchers. Cooper knew he had only one chance to take it out. He opened a comm channel to the rest of his team. All units converge on my position. We're going to ram that flagship with everything we've got. There was a moment of stunned silence, then a chorus of acknowledgements. The super soldiers, battered and bleeding but unbroken, formed up around Cooper's fighter, their faces grim with persistence. Together they accelerated towards the flagship, their engines screaming with the effort. The Kazin, realizing their intent, threw everything they had at them, filling the void with a storm of missiles and plasma. But the super soldiers didn't falter. They wove through the deadly barrage with impossible grace, their minds and bodies working in perfect unison. And then, with a final, defiant roar of engines, they slammed into the flagship's hull, their fighters crumpling like tin cans. For a moment, there was only silence and darkness. Then a series of massive explosions ripped through the flagship's hull as the super soldiers' antimatter bombs detonated, setting off a chain reaction that consumed the mighty warship in a blinding flash of light. In the chaos that followed, the Denobulan fleet struck, catching the Xin off guard and in disarray. The battle was fierce and bloody, but with the super soldiers' sabotage and the Denobulans' courage, the tide began to turn. And on the bridge of the Shadow of Fury, Fornax watched with a mixture of awe and trepidation as the Xin fleet crumbled before their onslaught. The super soldiers had done the impossible, but at what cost? He could only hope that Cooper and his team had somehow survived, that their sacrifice had not been in vain. For in the wake of this victory, Fornax knew that the true battle was only just beginning. The questions Cooper had raised about the Firstborn and the super soldier program burdened immensely on Fornax's mind. He had a feeling that the answers they sought would lead them down a dark and dangerous path, one that could shake the very foundations of the galaxy. But for now, there was only the flush of victory and the bitter tang of loss. The Denobulan Empire had been saved, but the price had been high. And as Fornax stared out into the starry void, he couldn't shake the feeling that their true enemy was still out there, waiting in the shadows. The war was far from finished, but with Cooper and his super soldiers at their side, Fornax knew they would face whatever challenges lay ahead with courage and tenacity. The Firstborn's legacy, whatever it might be, would not be forgotten. And so as the Shadow of Fury set course for home, Fornax allowed himself a moment of hope. The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, but as long as there were those willing to fight for what was right, there was always a chance for a better tomorrow. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with peril, but Fornax was ready to face it head-on. For the sake of the Denobulan Empire, for the memory of the fallen, and for the promise of a future free from the tyranny of the Kazin, he would do whatever it took. And with Cooper and his super soldiers at his side, he knew that anything was possible. The Firstborn's legacy, whatever it might be, would be their guiding light in the darkness to come. Cooper's stealth shuttle drifted silently through the Xin staging area, its advanced cloaking systems rendering it invisible to the enemy's sensors. In the cramped hold, the super soldiers checked their weapons and equipment, their faces grim with concentration. Cooper stood at the front, his eyes scanning the holographic display of the target shipyard. "All right, listen up," he said, his voice low and intense. "We've got 3 teams, each with a specific objective. My team will infiltrate the main shipyard and plant explosives on their critical systems. Reeves, your team will hack into their comms network and sow as much chaos as you can. Sato, you're going after their high command on the flagship. We do this fast and clean, and we get out before they know what hit them." The super soldiers nodded, their enhanced minds already running through the mission parameters. Cooper felt a surge of pride as he looked at his team. They were the best of the best, each one a perfect fusion of human ingenuity and Firstborn technology. As the shuttle approached the shipyard, Cooper and his team silently disembarked, using their exoskeleton's magnetic grips to cling to the hull of a Xin warship. They moved with fluid grace, their enhanced muscles and reflexes allowing them to navigate the treacherous surface with ease. At the airlock, Cooper placed a small device against the control panel. With a muffled hiss, the door slid open, and the super soldiers slipped inside. The Xin crew never stood a chance. Cooper and his team moved through the ship like ghosts, their silenced weapons dispatching any opposition with ruthless efficiency. In the engine room, Cooper placed the explosive charges on the main reactor, his hands a blur of motion. Next to him, his teammate downloaded schematics and technical data from the Kazin computers, her eyes flickering back and forth as she absorbed the information. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Cooper's head snapped up, his enhanced hearing picking up the sound of approaching footsteps. "We've been compromised," he said into his comm. "All teams, status report." Reeves' voice crackled over the link. "We've hacked their comms, but they're onto us. We're pulling back to the extraction point." There was a moment of tense silence, then Sato's voice strained and breathless. "We're pinned down on the flagship. They knew we were coming. We can't hold out much longer." Cooper's expression resolute. He looked at his team, saw the persistence in their eyes. "Change of plans," he said. "We're going after Sato. Reeves, get your team to the shuttle and prep for immediate dust-off. We'll meet you there." Fornax's voice cut in, sharp with concern. "Cooper, you can't be serious. You're abandoning the mission?" Cooper shook his head even though Fornax couldn't see him. "I'm not abandoning anything, but I'm not leaving my people behind. We'll finish the job, but we do it together." There was a pause, then Fornax sighed. "Understood. Good luck, Cooper. Bring them home." Cooper and his team moved through the Kazin shipyard like a force of nature. Their exoskeletons enhanced speed and strength, allowing them to plow through any resistance. They boarded the flagship, fighting their way through hordes of snarling Kazin warriors. On the bridge, Cooper found himself face to face with the Kazin Emperor's elite guard. They were massive, each one nearly twice Cooper's size, their armor jam-packed with spikes and their claws crackling with energy. But Cooper was not intimidated. He had been created for this, his body and mind honed to the pinnacle of human potential. He charged forward, his plasma blades flashing in a deadly dance. The Kazin guards fell before him like wheat before a scythe, their armor melting under the searing heat of Cooper's blades. He moved with a speed and precision that defied belief, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to dodge their attacks with ease. In the end, only Cooper remained standing, his armor scorched and dented but his spirit unbroken. He found Sato and her team, battered but alive, and together they fought their way back to the shuttle. As they fled the crumbling flagship, Cooper felt a sense of grim satisfaction. They had struck a blow against the Kazin, but he knew this was only the beginning. In the shuttle's hold, as his team tended to their wounds and the Denobulan medics fussed over them, Cooper stared out at the stars, his mind racing. They had won a victory today, but at a terrible cost. Too many of his brothers and sisters lay dead, their bodies left behind on the Kazin ships. And still, the questions lingered. Who are the firstborn, really? What had been their purpose in creating the super soldiers, and what dark secrets lay hidden in the gaps of Cooper's memory? As the shuttle docked with the shadow of fury, Cooper made a silent vow. He would find the answers, whatever it takes. He owed it to his fallen comrades and to himself. The Denobulan fleet surged forward, their ships gleaming with the light of 1,000 suns as they tore through the void. At the vanguard, the Shadow of Fury led the charge, its hull still scorched from the daring rescue mission on the Kazin flagship. On the bridge, Cooper stood tall, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Kazin fleet, once an imposing wall of steel and fire, now scattered before them like leaves in a hurricane. "All ships, focus fire on their central formation," he ordered, his voice calm and controlled. "Let's break their spine." The Denobulan ships opened fire, their advanced weapons, reverse-engineered from firstborn technology, cutting through the Kazin's shields seamlessly. Cooper watched with grim satisfaction as Kazin ships crumpled and exploded under the onslaught. Beside him, Fornax pored over the data they had stolen from the Kazin computers, his scales rippling with concentration. "Cooper, you need to see this," he said, his voice tight with tension. Cooper leaned in, his enhanced eyesight scanning the data with blinding speed. What he saw made his blood run cold. Genetic sequences, DNA strands twisted and warped in ways that defied nature. The Kazin Emperor had been playing God. "He's trying to create his own super soldiers," Cooper said, his voice hard as steel. "Using firstborn technology." Fornax nodded, his eyes wide with horror. It all makes sense now. The Kazin's sudden military superiority, their relentless aggression, they've been fueled by these abominations. Cooper's mind raced, pieces of the puzzle falling into place. The Kazin Emperor's obsession with firstborn artifacts, his willingness to sacrifice countless lives in the pursuit of conquest. It had all been leading to this. "There's more," Fornax said, his claws tapping at the console. "References to a hidden firstborn facility, deep in uncharted space. The Emperor's been searching for it, but the location is encrypted. Cooper's heartbeat quickened, a strange mix of excitement and trepidation rising in his chest. A firstborn facility, lost to the ages. It could hold the key to everything. The truth about his own creation, the fate of the firstborn themselves. He turned to Fornax, his eyes blazing with intensity. "We need to find that facility, before the Kazin Emperor does. It may be our only chance to unravel this mystery and put an end to his mad ambitions." Fornax hesitated, his loyalty to the Denobulan cause warring with his trust in Cooper. But as he looked into the human's eyes, he saw a perseverance that could move mountains, a strength of will that had already accomplished the impossible. "All right," Fornax said, his voice heavy with the weight of the decision. "I'll speak with High Command. We'll divert a ship, a small team. But, Cooper, this mission will be off the books. Strictly Black Ops." Cooper nodded, his heart made. "Understood. I'll handpick my team. We'll find that facility, and we'll uncover the truth, no matter the cost." As the Denobulan fleet pushed the Zin back, their victory hard won but decisive, Cooper and Fornax prepared for their covert mission. They pored over star charts and ancient firstborn navigational data, trying to decipher the location of the hidden facility. Cooper assembled his team, choosing only the best of the best. Reeves, his trusted second-in-command, and Sato, the stealthy assassin. They were joined by a handful of Denobulan commandos, hand-picked by Fornax for their skill and loyalty. As they boarded a nondescript freighter, stripped of any identifying markings and equipped with the latest in stealth technology, Cooper felt a sense of destiny settling over him. He knew, deep in his bones, that this mission would change everything. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and he would stop at nothing to find it. The unmarked freighter slipped through the void, its hull a patchwork of matte black and dull grey panels designed to absorb sensor scans. Inside the cramped confines of the ship, Cooper pored over the fragments of firstborn data they had managed to decipher, his enhanced mind processing the complex algorithms and cryptic symbols with inhuman speed. Fornax, hunched over the navigation console, let out a low hiss of frustration. "These coordinates make no sense. It's like the firstborn used a completely different system of mapping the galaxy." Cooper looked up, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "They probably did. Keep running the permutations. The answer's there. We just have to find it." As the ship ventured deeper into uncharted space, the crew fell into an uneasy routine. The Denobulan experts worked tirelessly to decipher the firstborn's language and technology, while the super soldiers honed their skills in the ship's cramped training room. But as the days stretched into weeks, strange things began to happen. The ship's sensors detected fleeting anomalies, ghostly echoes that vanished as soon as they appeared. Ancient defense systems, long dormant, suddenly flared to life, forcing the crew to take evasive action. And then there were the dreams. At first, Cooper dismissed them as a side effect of the prolonged space travel and the stress of the mission. But as the visions grew more vivid and coherent, he began to suspect they were something more. In his dreams, Cooper found himself in the midst of a war unlike any he had ever seen. Vast armadas of ships, some sleek and angular like the firstborn's technology, others organic and pulsing with sickly light, clashed against the backdrop of dying stars and shattered planets. He saw worlds consumed by fire, entire civilizations wiped out in an instant. And through it all he felt a sense of terrible purpose, as if he were witnessing the end of the galaxy itself. Cooper woke from these dreams drenched in sweat, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew with a certainty that defied logic that these were not just dreams, but memories. Memories of a war that had nearly destroyed the galaxy eons ago, and memories of the firstborn's desperate struggle to prevent it from happening again. As Cooper shared his experiences with the other super soldiers, he found that they too had been plagued by similar visions. Reeves spoke of a great library, its walls lined with the knowledge of 1,000 civilizations, while Sato described a chamber filled with strange machines that pulsed with an eerie blue light. Together, They began to piece together the fragments of the Firstborn's history, a story of a civilization that had risen to the heights of power and knowledge, only to be consumed by a war that threatened to unmake the very fabric of the universe. And at the center of it all, the super soldiers themselves, created by the Firstborn as a last line of defense, a failsafe against the darkness that threatened to engulf the galaxy. As the ship pushed deeper into the void, the crew's perseverance was tested like never before. They encountered strange new life forms, some benign, others hostile. They navigated through treacherous asteroid fields and ion storms that threatened to tear the ship apart. But through it all, Cooper and his team pressed on, driven by a sense of purpose that transcended their individual desires and fears. They knew that the fate of the stars hung in the balance, and that they alone held the key to unlocking the secrets of the Firstborn. And then, just when they thought they could go no further, they found it. A hidden facility buried deep within the heart of a shattered moon, its entrance concealed by a web of ancient defenses and cloaking technology. As the ship approached the facility, Cooper felt a sense of trepidation mixed with excitement. He knew that whatever they found inside would change the course of history for better or for worse. But before they could dock with the facility, the ship's sensors detected a new threat. Xin ships, dozens of them, dropping out of hyperspace and bearing down on their location. Cooper cursed under his breath. The Xin Emperor must have been tracking their movements, waiting for them to lead him to the Firstborn's secrets. "Evasive maneuver," he barked, strapping himself into the command chair. "Get us to that facility now." The ship lurched and spun as the pilot put it through a series of dizzying maneuvers, narrowly evading the Kzin's weapons fire. Cooper watched the tactical display with growing dread as more and more enemy ships emerged from the void. But even as the odds turned against them, Cooper refused to give up. He had come too far, sacrificed too much to let the Xin Emperor win now. With a final desperate push, the ship plunged towards the facility, its hull groaning under the strain. The Xin ships closed in, their weapons hammering at the ship's failing shields. And then, with a blinding flash of light, they were through. The ship slipped through the facility's defenses like a ghost, the Xin ships slamming into the ancient barriers with a series of explosive impacts. As the ship settled into the facility's docking bay, Cooper let out a long, shuddering breath. They had made it, but the real battle was just beginning. He looked around at his team, seeing the perseverance and fear etched onto their faces. "Suit up," he said, his voice hard as steel. "We're going in." The facility was unlike anything Cooper had ever seen. Vast chambers filled with strange machinery, pulsing with an eerie blue light. Corridors that seemed to stretch on forever, their walls etched with symbols that danced and shifted before his eyes. And everywhere the sense of age and power, as if the very stones themselves were alive and watching. As they delved deeper into the facility, Cooper and his team encountered wonders and horrors beyond their wildest imaginings. They found chambers filled with stasis pods, each containing a member of a long-dead alien race. They discovered libraries filled with the knowledge of Thusan civilizations, their secrets waiting to be unlocked. And then, in the heart of the facility, they found the truth. A vast chamber, its walls lined with glowing screens and pulsing consoles, and in the center, a single massive machine, its purpose as clear as it was terrifying. This was the Firstborn's greatest secret, the key to their power and the reason for their disappearance, a machine capable of rewriting the very fabric of the universe, of altering the course of history itself. And it was here, in this chamber, that the true purpose of the super soldiers was finally revealed. They were not just warriors, created to fight the Firstborn's wars. They were guardians, designed to protect the galaxy from the very power that had created them. Cooper stood before the machine, his mind turning with the implications of what he had learned. He knew that the hope of the universe hung in the balance, and that he and his team were the only ones who could prevent the Xin Emperor from unleashing a power beyond his understanding. But before he could act, the chamber shook with the force of an explosion. The Xin had breached the facility, their warriors pouring through the corridors like a flood. Cooper and his team sprang into action, their weapons blazing as they fought to hold back the tide. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with a ferocity born of desperation and the knowledge that they were the galaxy's last hope. And then, in the midst of the chaos, Cooper saw him. The Kazin Emperor, his eyes blazing with madness and his claws dripping with blood. He stood before the machine, his hand reaching out to touch the pulsing console. Cooper leapt forward, his plasma blade flashing in the dim light. He knew that he had only one chance, one moment to stop the Emperor before it was too late. The two warriors clashed in a flurry of sparks and snarling metal, their blades locked together in a deadly embrace. Cooper could feel the Emperor's hot breath on his face, could see the madness in his eyes. But even as they fought, Cooper knew that this was not the true battle. The real fight was taking place within the machine itself, as the Firstborn's ancient programming struggled against the Emperor's malevolent will. And in that moment, Cooper made his choice. With a final, desperate effort, he pushed the Emperor back, his blade slicing through the air in a blinding arc. The Emperor stumbled, his eyes widening in shock and pain, and then, with a final gurgling cry, he fell, his body slumping to the floor in a pool of spreading blood. Cooper stood over the fallen Emperor, his chest heaving with exertion. He knew that the battle was just the beginning, that there were still Xin warriors to be fought and secrets to be uncovered. But for now, in this moment, he allowed himself a small measure of satisfaction. They had done it. They had stopped the Emperor and prevented the unleashing of a power beyond their understanding. And as he looked around at his team, battered and bloody but alive, Cooper knew that they had become something more than just soldiers or guardians. They had become a family, bound together by the struggles and sacrifices they had endured. Together they would continue their mission, exploring the depths of the Firstborn's legacy and protecting the galaxy from the dangers that lurked in the shadows. For they were the inheritors of a great and terrible responsibility, and they would not rest until the galaxy was safe once more. In the heart of the Firstborn facility, plasma blasts and the clash of metal on metal echoed through the ancient halls. Cooper ducked under a vicious swipe from the Xin Emperor's claws, the genetically enhanced alien matching him move for move. The Emperor's eyes glowed with a feral, unnatural light, his muscles bulging beneath his armor. Cooper gritted his teeth, his own enhanced body pushed to its limits. He could hear his team fighting desperately around him, holding off the Emperor's elite guard. Reeves grappled with a massive Xin warrior, their exoskeletons sparking and groaning under the strain. Sato flickered in and out of sight, her stealth suit allowing her to strike from the shadows. In the control room above, Fornax's claws flew over the Firstborn consoles, his eyes darting back and forth as he tried to decipher the alien technology. The screens flashed with strange symbols and diagrams, the knowledge of a long-dead civilization tantalizingly close. Suddenly a hologram flickered to life in the center of the room. A figure, tall and slender, with an elongated head and luminous eyes. It spoke in a language none of them understood, but Cooper felt a strange sense of recognition, as if some part of him had heard these words before. The Xin Emperor snarled, lunging forward with renewed ferocity. "The Firstborn's secrets will be mine," he growled, his voice a guttural rasp. "I will become a god." Cooper met the Emperor's charge head-on, their blades clashing in a blinding flare of energy. They traded blows with inhuman speed and precision, their movements a deadly dance. Above them, Fornax let out a triumphant shout. The hologram pulsed, and suddenly the room was filled with a blinding light. When it faded, Cooper and his team found themselves holding new weapons, sleek and powerful, thrumming with barely contained energy. Cooper grinned fiercely, feeling the weight of the plasma rifle in his hands. "Let's finish this," he said, his voice hard as steel. With their newfound arsenal, the tide of the battle began to turn. The super soldiers moved like avenging angels, their weapons cutting through the Kzin's armor like paper. The Emperor's elite guard fell one by one, their bodies smoking and charred. But the Emperor himself fought on, his rage and desperation fueling his strength. He and Cooper clashed again and again, their battle carrying them deep into the heart of the facility. And then, with a roar of triumph, the Emperor struck a panel on the wall. A countdown began, alien numbers flashing red and urgent. "If I cannot have this power," the Emperor hissed, "then no one will." Cooper's eyes widened in realization, a self-destruct sequence. The facility and all its knowledge would be destroyed. He turned to his team, his face grim. "Get out of here," he ordered, his voice brooking no argument. "Take Fornax and go. I'll handle the Emperor." Reeves opened his mouth to protest, but Cooper cut him off. "That's an order, soldier. Go!" And with a final anguished look, Reeves led the others out, Fornax clutching a data drive with as much of the Firstborn's knowledge as he had been able to gather. Cooper turned back to the Emperor, his heart made. The alien laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think you can defeat me, human? I have the power of the Firstborn flowing through my veins." Cooper smiled coldly. "You may have their power," he said, raising his rifle, "but I have their purpose." They clashed for the final time, the facility shuddering and crumbling around them. Cooper fought with a speed and ferocity he had never known, his body pushed beyond its limits, and then, with a final desperate blow, he struck the Emperor down. But the victory was short-lived. A chunk of debris struck Cooper, sending him sprawling. He struggled to rise, his body broken and bleeding. As his vision began to fade, Cooper saw a figure approaching through the haze of pain. Not the Emperor, but one of the Firstborn, tall and radiant. It knelt beside him, its voice echoing in his mind. "You have done well, my child," it said, its words filled with a deep, abiding love. "But your journey is not over. You are more than a soldier, more than a weapon. You are a guardian, a protector of all life, and you will be needed again." With a final shuddering breath, Cooper let go, his body dissolving into light. But even as his physical form faded, he knew that his spirit, his essence, would live on. For he was a child of the Firstborn, a guardian of the galaxy, and his watch had just begun. Fornax stood on the bridge of the Shadow of Fury, his eyes fixed on the display as the ship emerged from hyperspace. The familiar stars of denobulan space filled the screen, a welcome sight after the harrowing journey to the Firstborn facility. But the homecoming was bittersweet, the weight of Cooper's sacrifice hanging heavy on the hearts of all aboard. As the ship docked at the orbital station, Fornax and the surviving super soldiers were greeted by a delegation of denobulan officials, their faces a mix of relief and sorrow. News of the team's heroic actions had spread quickly, and the entire Empire mourned the loss of Cooper and the fallen soldiers. In the days that followed, Fornax and the team worked tirelessly to integrate the recovered Firstborn technology into the denobulan fleet. The advanced weapons and defensive systems were a game-changer, allowing the denobulan forces to push the Kazin back to their home systems with unprecedented speed and efficiency. Reeves, his face still bearing the scars of the final battle, oversaw the training of denobulan soldiers in the use of the new technology. "Cooper would have wanted this," he said to Fornax as they watched a squad of recruits running drills with the enhanced combat exoskeletons. He always believed that knowledge should be shared, used to protect and serve. But not all denobulans shared this sentiment. As the dust of war settled and the Empire began to rebuild, whispers of discontent began to surface. Some saw the super soldiers as a threat, their enhanced abilities and foreign origins a source of fear and mistrust. In the halls of power, factions emerged, each vying for control of the Firstborn technology. Some, like Fornax, believed it should be used for the betterment of all, while others saw it as a means to solidify their own power and influence. Fornax found himself caught in the middle, his loyalty to his people tested by his promise to Cooper to carry on the Firstborn's legacy. He spent long hours in meetings and debates, arguing passionately for the responsible use of the technology. But even as he fought for unity, Fornax could sense a growing darkness at the heart of the denobulan government. Whispers of secret experiments and hidden agendas reached his ears. and he began to fear that the Firstborn's gift may have been a curse in disguise. Reeves, too, sensed the growing threat. His enhanced senses, honed by years of combat and training, picked up on the subtle signs of treachery and deceit. He began to investigate, using his skills and the resources of the super soldiers to uncover the truth. What he found was a web of lies and betrayal that reached to the highest levels of denobulan society. A secret cabal, led by a shadowy figure known only as the Architect, had been working to seize control of the Firstborn technology for their own nefarious purposes. Reeves brought his findings to Fornax, and together they realized the terrible scope of the conspiracy. The Architect planned to use the technology to create an army of enhanced soldiers, loyal only to him, and to use them to overthrow the denobulan government and establish a new order with himself at the helm. Fornax was torn, his heart heavy with the knowledge that his own people could be capable of such treachery, but he knew that he could not stand idly by and allow the Firstborn's legacy to be perverted in such a way. Together with Reeves and the remaining super soldiers, Fornax hatched a plan to stop the Architect and his cabal. They would strike fast and hard, using the element of surprise to their advantage. But even as they prepared for the final confrontation, Fornax couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing into the Architect's hands. The cabal's influence ran deep, and they had eyes and ears everywhere. In the end, it was Sato who discovered the terrible truth. The Architect had been one step ahead of them all along, and the confrontation was a trap. The Cabal had no intention of using the Firstborn technology for their own gain. Instead, they planned to destroy it, along with anyone who knew of its existence. Fornax and the super soldiers fought bravely, but they were outmatched and outnumbered. One by one they fell until only Fornax and Reeves remained. In a final high-stakes endeavor, they managed to corner the Architect in his own laboratory. But the mastermind had one last trick up his sleeve. With a cruel smile, he activated a self-destruct sequence, intending to take the Firstborn technology and all knowledge of it to his grave. Reeves, seeing no other choice, made the ultimate sacrifice. He tackled the Architect using his enhanced strength to hold the villain in place as the countdown ticked down to 0. Fornax, his heart heavy with grief, fled the laboratory just as the explosion ripped through the complex. He watched from a distance as the flames consumed all evidence of the Firstborn's existence, along with the last of his comrades. In the aftermath, Fornax knew what he had to do. The galaxy was not ready for the Firstborn's knowledge, not yet. The wounds of war were still too fresh, the scars of betrayal too deep. With a heavy heart, he gathered what remained of the super soldier team and placed them back into cryo sleep, hidden away in a secret location known only to him. He vowed to watch over them, to keep them safe until the time was right for their return. And so Fornax found himself alone, the sole guardian of a secret that could change the course of the galaxy. He threw himself into the work of rebuilding, using his influence to steer the denobulan Empire towards a path of peace and cooperation. But always in the back of his mind, he carried the memory of Cooper and the sacrifice he had made. He knew that one day the galaxy would need the super soldiers again, and when that day came, he would be ready. Years turned into decades, and decades into centuries. Fornax, his lifespan extended by the Firstborn technology he had integrated into his own body, watched as the galaxy changed and evolved around him. Empires rose and fell, wars were fought and won, and through it all Fornax remained a silent guardian waiting for the day when the galaxy would be ready for the return of the Firstborn's legacy. And so on a quiet night, as the stars shone down on the sleeping city below, Fornax stood on the balcony of his tower, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He knew that somewhere out there, Cooper and the other super soldiers slept, waiting for the call to action. He didn't know when that call would come or what form it would take, but he knew that when it did he would be ready, for he was the guardian of the Firstborn's legacy, and he would not rest until the galaxy was safe once more. In the cold, silent depths of the cryo chambers, the super soldiers slept, their bodies preserved in perfect stasis. But their minds were far from idle. Linked by the ancient, mysterious technology of the Firstborn, they dreamed as one, their consciousness drifting through the eons. They saw the countless battles they had fought, the worlds they had saved and the comrades they had lost. They felt the weight of their destiny, the burden of being the guardians of a galaxy that would never truly know peace. And then, in the midst of their shared dream, they found themselves somewhere else entirely. A vast ethereal realm stretched out before them, a place of shimmering light and endless possibility. And there, waiting for them, were the spirits of the Firstborn themselves. Reeves, his dream self still bearing the scars of his final battle, stepped forward, his eyes wide with wonder. "What is this place?" he asked, his voice echoing in the strange, infinite space. One of the Firstborn, a tall, luminous being with eyes that held the wisdom of ages, smiled gently. "This is the realm beyond realms, the place where the guardians of the galaxy may find rest and counsel." Sato, her dream form as lithe and deadly as ever, frowned. "But Cooper, he sacrificed himself. How can he be here?" The Firstborn's smile grew wider. "Cooper's sacrifice has elevated him beyond the physical world. He now serves as a guardian of the galaxy alongside us, watching over the countless lives he fought to protect." As if on cue, a familiar figure emerged from the light, his form both solid and translucent at the same time. Cooper, his face free of the lines of worry and strain that had marked his final days, grinned at his old comrades. "It's good to see you all again," he said, his voice warm with affection. "I wish it were under better circumstances." Reeves, his heart swelling with a mix of joy and sorrow, stepped forward to clasp Cooper's hand. It felt solid and real, despite the dreamlike nature of their surroundings. "We thought we'd lost you," Reeves said, his voice thick with emotion. Cooper shook his head. "I'm always with you in spirit, if not in body. But now you have a choice to make." The Firstborn, their forms pulsing with gentle light, spoke as one. "You have fought bravely and sacrificed much. Now, you may choose to join Cooper and us in our eternal vigil, watching over the galaxy from afar. Or you may return to the physical world, to awaken when the need is greatest and continue your fight for justice." The super soldiers, each lost in their own thoughts, pondered the choice before them. To ascend to a higher plane, to find peace and purpose in the afterlife, or to return to the never-ending struggle, to the blood and sweat and tears of the battlefield. One by one they made their choices. Some, weary of war and longing for a rest that had always eluded them, chose to join Cooper and the Firstborn. Others, their sense of duty and hunger for justice still burning bright, decided to remain in cryo sleep, ready to awaken and fight another day. As the dream began to fade, the Firstborn's parting words echoed in their minds. "Your sacrifices have not been in vain. The galaxy will always need guardians, and you have proven yourselves worthy of that mantle. Until we meet again, in this life or the next." Reeves, the last to make his choice, looked to Cooper, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'll see you on the other side, brother, but not yet. There's still work to be done." Cooper, his form already fading back into the light, nodded in understanding. "I'll be watching over you always. Give 'em hell, Reeves." And then the dream was gone, and the super soldiers were once again alone in their cryopods, their minds and bodies frozen in time. But now they had a renewed sense of purpose, a knowledge that their struggles were part of something greater. Years turned into decades, and decades into centuries. The galaxy changed and evolved, new powers rising and falling like the tides. But through it all, the super soldiers slept on, waiting for the day when they would be needed once more. That day came sooner than anyone could have predicted. Fornax, his scales dulled with age and his eyes heavy with the weight of centuries, stood before the cryopods, his heart heavy with dread. A new threat had arisen, a powerful alien race that sought to dominate and enslave all other species. The Denobulan Empire, once a shining beacon of hope and progress, had fallen into decay and corruption, unable to stand against this new enemy. Fornax, his claws shaking with age and emotion, reached out to activate the cryopod's release sequence. "Forgive me, my friends," he whispered, his voice cracked and feeble. "I had hoped to let you rest, to spare you the horrors of another war. But the galaxy needs you now, more than ever." With a hiss of escaping gas and a flurry of blinking lights, the cryopods opened, and the super soldiers emerged, their bodies as strong and vital as the day they first entered stasis. Reeves, his eyes blinking in the sudden light, looked to Fornax, a question on his lips. But Fornax, his face grim and determined, spoke before Reeves could give voice to his thoughts. "There is a new evil in the galaxy, one that threatens to destroy everything we have fought for. I have watched and waited, hoping that the younger races would find the strength to stand against it. But they have failed, and now the responsibility falls to us once more." The super soldiers, their minds and bodies still adjusting to the sudden awakening, listened intently as Fornax briefed them on the situation. The alien race, known as the Vortax, had already conquered a dozen systems, enslaving entire populations and stripping planets of their resources. Reeves, his tactical mind already whirring with possibilities, stepped forward. "What do we know about their capabilities, their weaknesses?" Fornax shook his head. "Very little, I'm afraid. They seem to possess technology far beyond anything we've encountered before, and their ships are virtually impenetrable to our weapons." Zato, her eyes glinting with a predatory light, cracked her knuckles. "Then we'll just have to find new ways to take them down. We didn't come this far to let some upstart aliens push us around." The other super soldiers nodded in agreement, their faces set with relentless drive. They had faced impossible odds before, and they would do so again. As they prepared for their new mission, donning their armor and checking their weapons, Reeves couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. How many times had they done this, marching off to war against an implacable foe? But then he remembered Cooper's words, the promise they had made to each other in that strange ethereal realm. They fought not just for themselves, but for the memory of all those who had sacrificed for the greater good. With a final nod to Fornax, Reeves led his team out of the cryo chamber, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Vortax would learn to fear the wrath of the firstborns chosen, just as the Kazin had before them. The final scene shows the super soldiers charging into battle, their eyes blazing with the light of the firstborn. Their weapons flashing in the darkness of space. They knew that their struggle would never truly end, that there would always be another enemy to face, another wrong to right. But they also knew that they were not alone. Cooper and the firstborn watched over them from afar, lending their strength and guidance to the fight. And in each other, they had found a bond that transcended time and space, a brotherhood forged in the fires of war and tempered by the weight of their shared destiny. The galaxy would never know true peace, but as long as the super soldiers stood watch, it would never fall to the forces of darkness and oppression. The end and the beginning. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.